You can have the best business in the world. If you don't have any customers, you have no business. We, as the Bruce McLaren Trust, would not be able to survive, would not be here today if it hadn't been for your support over the years, and for that we truly thank you. So tonight is all about the new Bruce McLaren Trust and the new trustees. So I would like to introduce them to you. There's myself. There is my husband, Stephen Donnell. Beside him is Warwick Mortimer. And somewhere, and he's usually quite easy to see, Michael Clark. And I'm sure none of them really need any introduction, but they will be having something to say to you a little later. And at the end of the evening, there will be an opportunity for questions and answers from any of the presenters. And there will be two more surprise presenters through the evening as we go. But just to put the evening into context, I want to show a short video.
Where does any story begin? Maybe this one began in New Zealand, back in the 1940s, in a children's hospital. Stricken by a rare disease of the hip at 9 years old, the young Bruce McLaren spent 2 years in traction, completely bedbound, day and night. He was not expected to walk again. We can only imagine the thoughts that ran through his head as he lay there. Dreams of unfettered freedom, perhaps, of speed and success beyond all measure. Through a combination of courage and bloody-mindedness, Bruce beat the disease and became a racer. He won his first hill climb at 14, his first Grand Prix at 22, the youngest man ever to do so at the time, and the successes just kept coming. Bruce McLaren was that rare thing, a perfect combination of driver and engineer, and he was bursting with ideas about how to build better cars. In 1963, to further his passion for innovative engineering, he founded McLaren. There was no fancy mission statement, just a simple goal: to win races. And that's exactly what they did. It was in the Can-Am series that McLaren first revealed itself as an awesome competitive force. Between 67 and 71, Works McLarens, sprayed in bold orange, won an incredible 37 out of 43 Can-Am races, including 19 1-2s. In 69, they won every single round, and people lined up to buy the new Mark's winning cars. McLaren dominated through sheer engineering excellence and driving talent.
McLaren is a former winner at Laguna Seca. He likes the track.
I've always liked it. I've been coming to Laguna Seca for years, and it's a great track, I think.
There was some talk that the car was bottoming out.
It's been doing that most of the week, and we've put some little skids underneath it so that we'll last the race all right without wearing through anything important.
So you don't expect any trouble in the race?
Well, I always expect trouble and hope we don't have it.
Well, you haven't had much so far in the Can-Am series.
No, not too much.
McLaren and Hulme have swept all 8 of the Can-Am events this year and are now dead even with 125 points each. Their bright orange McLaren Chevys take the front positions for this 9th event. McLaren in number 4, Hulme in number 5.
McLaren driving legend Denny Hulme had another explanation. The reason this team has been so successful, he said, is that we have a better time than anyone else. But the good times weren't to last forever.
So the good times weren't to last forever. And of course, I'm sure everybody here knows what happened on June 2nd, 1970, when my father was testing the M8D Can-Am car at Goodwood in England. 36 people in the factory that day were told what had happened and were told to go home and take the following day off as a mark of respect to Bruce. 36 people showed up for work the next day. And when asked why, they said, taking the day off is a mark of respect for Bruce. He wanted to build cars and win races, and that's what they continued to do. Today, McLaren Racing is the second oldest Formula One team on the grid. That red Italian whose F word we don't say team is the oldest. And And then in 2010, McLaren Automotive was created. And it was actually at the opening of this very showroom that my husband Stephen and I were offered roles as brand ambassadors for McLaren Automotive. And we left Upper Hutt and went to Woking, England. It was an incredible opportunity to work for the company my father founded, but also a young automotive company in its formative years, and to see it grow. We worked there. What a place to call your office. That's the McLaren Technology and McLaren Production Centre in the UK, and that's what they call the Boulevard, which is the main corridor that runs through McLaren Technology Centre. We had an amazing time meeting fantastic people in some of the far beyond places in the world, but I got asked one question constantly, and that was, what would your father think of McLaren Automotive? And that answers the question. In 1969, my father built a prototype road car, the M6 GT. That's the same shop with me in the McLaren Automotive 570 GT. It would be a complete evening's presentation to talk about the similarities between those two cars. It's astounding. So hand on heart, I could say, I think my father would love the cars. We've got one of the very first, the 12C, over by the windows. We've got the fabulous McLaren Elva, and I need to thank Michael Giltrap for allowing us to have that here tonight. And we've got the newest McLaren Elva here behind me. And if you have any specific questions about the cars, please see McLaren Auckland over in the back there. Dennis, thank you. I had a complete mental block there. So, COVID happened. And like for a lot of people, things changed. And Stephen and I talked about what we were going to do. Our jobs, travelling the world, meeting people, wasn't able to happen. And Stephen had children and grandchildren here in New Zealand, and my stepfather had sadly passed away. And we knew we were going to come back to New Zealand at some point, but we weren't sure when. But we made the decision that we would do it at the beginning of this year, January, February-ish this year. And then we had to apply to MIQ, and we won't go there, but we managed to get a place. And it was while we were sitting in MIQ thinking about what we were going to do that the question of the trust came up. And we thought, well, let's put together a proposal and ask the 3 then trustees what they would think if they retired and handed over to 3 new trustees. We didn't actually expect them to say yes, and we didn't realise quite what we were taking on, so much for retirement. But long story short, the proposal was accepted, along with some new aims and objectives that we as 3, which became 4 trustees, then decided to adopt. We wanted to simplify things. And really, I think the last point on this slide is the most important. Financial sustainability and a succession plan for the trust. Trustees don't last forever, unfortunately. The name McLaren is good and strong in the UK and globally now with McLaren Automotive. And we wanted the same sort of thing for the trust. We needed to continue to recognise the contribution and achievements of not only Bruce, but other New Zealanders. And we have some in the audience tonight, and I acknowledge your contribution. Not only drivers, but also engineers and designers. And the best way to do that is through displays of memorabilia that people can go and see, and also to tell a story through social media and things like Facebook and our new website. My father started his career by really winning a driver scholarship to the UK back in 1958. And that enabled him to get a Formula 2 seat, which quickly became a Formula 1 seat because of his success with the Cooper Car Company. And through his relationship with Jack Brabham and seeing what he did, setting up his own team, my father set up Bruce McLaren Motor Racing. So we thought, what better way to perpetuate his legacy than with some scholarships? And Michael Clark will talk a little more about those in the future. The other thing we felt really important was to re-establish the relationship with McLaren UK. Unfortunately, over the years, it had deteriorated and fallen away. But it's really important, I think, to make that link between that young New Zealander with a big dream and the current McLaren team today, because a lot of people don't know that story. And so we're really wanting to take that out there. And again, with our Facebook site and our webpage, we will be working much harder to tell that story and inform people moving forward. We wanted to continue the relationship that had been established with some of the educational groups. As a charitable trust, we have a responsibility to provide education or help educational institutes. So the University of Auckland, again, that links in with our scholarship to for a young engineer, and we will talk more about that shortly. And also the Bruce McLaren Intermediate School, and I'm delighted Liz, the principal, is here today, and there will be some more news about that soon too. But it's all about the financial sustainability and succession plan, and now we're going to go into a little more detail around that. So what I would like to do is move on the slide one more and talk about our relationship with the McLaren Group. Zach Brown is CEO of McLaren Racing. Zach is also the biggest petrol head you could probably want to meet, with the most amazing collection of historic cars, and he loves his historic motorsport and is a huge dad fan. So we asked him if he would be one of our patrons, and we were delighted when he accepted. So Zach is now officially a patron of the Bruce McLaren Trust. We also asked McLaren for their official endorsement, and they were delighted, and they said, of course. And what they did was allow us to use their logo, which, to be honest, we were absolutely blown away by. It is a highly, highly protected piece of IP. And for us to be able to use it on all our social media sites and all our written material and documents and so on is just absolutely fantastic. And we really need to thank the McLaren Group for allowing us to do that. And then they made Stephen and me honorary ambassadors for both racing and automotive. So we're still continuing to do what we used to do. We're just now not getting paid for it. But again, it is a huge honour to be recognised in that way. And it really has kind of cemented our ability to be able to tell that story that I mentioned earlier about making the link between Bruce and the current McLaren Group, racing and automotive. And of course, our lovely Emma Gilmore is also helping us with that story, very much so. So I'm now going to hand over to Michael Clark, who is one of our new trustees, and he is going to talk very much about the financial side of things, the scholarships that we're awarding, and our links with both Auckland University and the Bruce McLaren Intermediate School.
Thank you, Amanda. I must say, for me, it is quite a delight to come to a motor racing evening where I'm not the MC. So, Amanda, thank you for stepping up and being the MC and doing a great job, I have to say. And I'd like to also endorse what Amanda said about this facility, this magnificent showroom being made available by the Giltrap family, the great supporters of New Zealand motor racing. We have so much to thank them for. So, we have 2 pieces of property out at Hampton Downs. We have an apartment and we have an industrial unit. And we've got the previous trustees to thank. There was a great deal of foresight to take some of the funds, most of the funds, from the sale of the M8A Can-Am car and invest them in property. And that is going to provide us with the backstop for future awards and scholarships that we're going to be able to make. So we have the apartment currently for sale on the market. And just this afternoon, Vern Reeve, that great supporter of New Zealand motor racing and real estate agent, presented us with an agreement. Vern's here tonight, so Vern's been beavering away to try and get us a sale. And what we will then be doing with the proceeds is investing to then use the interest that we get from the proceeds of the sale of that property for the scholarships that we are looking at awarding. We've also got the industrial unit there, and it's stopped now, but it seemed to be that for about a month or two, hardly a week went by that I didn't get a phone call from somebody asking, could I please have first right of refusal on it? Well, we can't give first right of refusal on it to anybody because we're not quite certain when we're going to be selling it and what its future is. But right now, it's been the place where Stephen and Amanda, and I even don't know quite the extent of the work that the two of them have done, but it has been enormous. So the amount of cataloguing assisted and perhaps led by Charles, who's here, who is a curator extraordinaire, and that has been a hugely important thing to make sure the collection is fully catalogued and a proper inventory has been established. So we need the industrial unit for the time being anyway, for storage as much as anything else. So the intention is that with the funds that we release from the sale of the apartment, that we invest, that we use the interest. Now, we don't want tonight to be one of those evenings where we start talking to the audience and saying, we need money. We need your help, because that would be both crass and not the intention of this evening at all. But what we would hope is that within time, we earn the respect and that you can see that there are some good things that we are doing that might mean that friends of the Bruce McLaren Trust think that there might be some use in putting some money that we can then help feed through to the two areas that we are looking to award scholarships to. The Trust already has a fantastic relationship with the engineering school at the Auckland University, and I'm pleased to see a couple of their notable people here this evening, Jared and Graham, you're welcome. And that is a great relationship. It's been established for some time, and Amanda, Stephen and myself were invited a couple of months ago now to the launch of the Formula SAE car, which the students have built. It's a wonderful little thing. It's extraordinary what they're doing. It's almost like sort of a mini Formula One team that's been put together, and they are heading off to Melbourne, I think it is, next month for the international, the start of the Formula SAE championship racing. So we want to be awarding scholarships to young students, graduates of Auckland University, to put them in a path, and our connections that Amanda has already talked about with McLaren Automotive may well provide a very good strategy for a direct line for those students and a world, who knows where that might lead them. Because that's where Bruce's two areas were, being a racing driver and being an engineer. So it's only appropriate that we make our scholarships in those two areas. As far as the driver is concerned, we would like to think that we would be able to provide some finance in some form for one of the different scholarships that is available for young drivers. If one or two of us had $5,000, for example, that's not going to go very far. But if a number of us have $5,000, then it can be pulled together, and there are various different organisations that are available to assist young drivers. It's no secret, it's on our website. I'm also a trustee of the Kiwi Driver Fund. We've had meeting with the Kiwi Driver Fund trustees. I sat in the middle because I was sort of half on each side. But there are all sorts of possibilities that we're looking potentially with how we're going to reach the dream that Amanda's already talked about of reminding ourselves that Bruce's career happened largely on the back of the Driver to Europe scheme in 1958. And if we can see some young drivers that we've all had a part in their future, then that would be a wonderful thing as well. So we have a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of brownie points to score. We don't want to start making lofty announcements of what we want to achieve, only to have them really fall apart and not go anywhere. But also it's fair to say that we don't want to aim nice and low and hope that we get there, because that would also be a bit of a waste of the enormous amount of energy and enthusiasm that exists both with the trustees and the friends of the Bruce McLaren Trust. So it's an exciting time, and I have to say, I've worked with some good teams. This is a great team that we've got, and you don't often get a chance to be a part of an organisation where you're working with the daughter of the person who the trust is named after. Back in those days that were called pre-COVID, I met with a gentleman from Australia. He had been hoping to try and figure out how he could set up a Jack Brabham Trust in Australia. I think he kind of came to the conclusion that it was just not going to be possible, that it really needed the family support, the family to drive the whole thing to really make it happen. Well, we've got that, and it's just an extraordinary advantage. You talked about new trustees, but long may this one last.
Thank you, Michael. That was very kind. And I would just like to mention the last point. Liz, the Trust will be making an annual donation to the Bruce McLaren Intermediate School. We don't know when that's going to happen. We don't know how much it's going to be. It does depend on us selling the apartment and the unit. But for all that you've done at that school, it's just amazing. So thank you. So I'm shortly going to invite Stephen to come up. Stephen is going to talk to us very much about the collection and the memorabilia, but before he starts that, he actually has one special presentation to make to a very important part of our audience tonight.
Thank you, Amanda. In 2017, the Trust moved from Remuera to Hampton Downs, and a young lady joined the McLaren Trust at that time, and she worked as office manager, and really it was a lot more than office manager. She actually ran the place over the last 5 years. Without her there, we wouldn't have the Trust the way it is today. She was very seriously thinking about leaving the Trust when, just before we applied to take it over, but she stayed on, and we're so thrilled she did. The knowledge, the wisdom, the guidance that she's been able to give us in relation to matters regarding the Trust has been absolutely formidable. We're so pleased to have her there. I'd like to invite her to come forward now and receive our presentation. Zita Panton. Many of you probably already know her. Through her work at the Trust, not just running the office, but running the whole ship. She did it all, and it's amazing. I'm so pleased to have you with us. We've got Warwick just to present her with our certificate recognising our appreciation and some flowers. Thank you, Zita, and we look forward to working with you for the unforeseeable future. As Amanda mentioned, I have taken on board looking after the collection. The collection is quite a formidable array of memorabilia. And it's difficult to say, I guess, just how many areas and categories come into it. I managed to count 14, and I'll need to refer to my notes because I don't really want to get distracted, because I could go off on a tangent quite easily and talk about things you don't want to hear about. So I'll try and keep it short by referring to my notes. Amanda and I were just talking some time ago about the collection, and we sort of looked at it as being an elephant, and how do you eat an elephant? One mouthful at a time. And that's really what it's become. In the last 180 days, I've spent 130 at Hampton Downs working on the collection. So it's been a major feat, and we're probably not even halfway through yet. So there's a huge amount still to come. The areas we've been looking at are books, magazines, posters, programs, audio tapes and CDs, films, videotapes and DVDs, artwork, clothing, models, trophies, photographs, memorabilia and archives. It's a huge collection, and there's a mighty array of gifts that you people and lots of others have given, and we really appreciate that, because without those things, we don't really have much of a collection. So thank you indeed for all that you've given us, and for the trust that you've put in us to manage it and look after it. The handover by the previous trustees included a large number of registers. Unfortunately, these were very outdated. The last time they were opened was 2003, and the most recent was about 2015, so not a lot had been done since that time. Trying to make head or tail of the registers with what we had there was very, very difficult, and so it meant that really I had to put those things to one side and just work and concentrate and focus on what we had. Because if I couldn't find it, then obviously we didn't have it. So the records that we have, the historical ones are on one side, and our new records have taken priority over that. We've worked through a number of those groups, and I'm very grateful to several volunteers who've been down there labouring intently with me. Sorry, I'll just back here, otherwise I'll go away. For a collection to have any value, it's got to have, we need to know exactly what we've got, where it fits into the picture, and where we can find it. And at the moment, or when we came in there, we couldn't do any of that. So we now are starting to get a handle on what we've got and where it is. And if it's been donated or loaned, we have a record of those things as well. So if you've given us stuff, as far as we've been able to, there's records showing who's given what. I can't say they're perfect, but they're the best we've been able to do with what we've got. The premises at Hampton Downs, where the collection's been stored for a long time, is not ideal to store such fragile collection. There are no temperature controls, no humidity controls, there are UV issues and dust and dirt problems. Quite a few of the items in the collection have been deteriorating, as many of the items have not been packed, stored or treated in a way necessary to preserve them. The collection will be moving to a new home, so it is currently undergoing a very lengthy process whereby we will identify each item that we have in the collection. We will create a new record and label each item, then packing them appropriately for storage and preparation for the move to the new premises. Each decision that we make about the storage takes into account the consequences that will improve the protection and preservation of the collection. The collection is being dealt with in accordance with museum collectors' best practice. We are very grateful to all those who are helping us with that work. The new trustees are responsible for this collection, and we take it very seriously. We're grateful for all the support that we've had and are still having. We've engaged a museum director to assist us with the collection, and he's been guiding and supporting me in every aspect of the auditing, identification, documentation, recording, packaging and storage of the collection. One of the most important things that we have had to do is to determine the scope of the collection. The Trust has been a repository over the years for a myriad of items that have no real relevance to the collection. The focus of the collection has been to identify the items which are for future displays and those which are required to be kept for archival or research purposes. As trustees, we must ensure that we protect and preserve the items while they are in storage and on display. it is of utmost importance that we ensure the legacy of Bruce McLaren and his compatriots is preserved for future generations. I left the police in early 2000s and went to work for an organisation called the New Zealand Olympic Committee. My time there I spent working with a chap who became a major part of my life. I was involved with the museum there, and this gentleman gave me a major amount of guidance, and we worked so well together as a team that when the time came to start working on the collection, I could think of no other better person than him to help with the collection. Charles Callis has been involved with the management of museums for over 30 years. He has a passion for storytelling and for the preservation of collections that tell the story of New Zealanders. He worked for over a decade at the Petone Settling Museum with some very innovative work being done there. For 16 years, Charles was the director of the New Zealand Olympic Museum. The museum was regarded by the International Olympic Committee as the best Olympic museum in the world, outside of obviously the IOC's museum in Lausanne. Charles and his colleagues produced groundbreaking exhibitions and displays. He gained a master's degree in Olympic organisational management with his thesis on the role of Olympic museums within the Olympic movement. He lectured internationally amongst Olympic nations on the establishment of Olympic museums. Charles is currently a museums consultant, playwright, filmmaker, and app developer. It's now my great pleasure to introduce to you Charles Callis.
Thank you, Stephen, for the wonderful introduction. What a great pleasure it is to be in this wonderful venue this evening. The legacy of Bruce's powerful thinking in terms of innovation and design, and a passion for inspiring others to follow. It's been such a joy in my life to be invited to give guidance on such an extraordinary collection. This collection is powerful, it is scoping, it is unique, and it's got international value. I've had the great pleasure and joy of being able to look through many aspects of the collection in terms of its strengths. Every aspect of that collection has got value, has got strength. To be able to listen to Bruce talking when he was sending home small message tapes to his parents, not only saying what he's thinking and what's happening in his daily life, but to talk about innovations. He's talking about technology innovations that he was wanting to integrate into motor cars. It's very moving to hear Bruce talking with so much energy and so much wisdom of the path ahead for him and the way that he saw it. And to read so many of the letters that Bruce wrote home. They're so colourful, so full, whether he's talking about Christmas, whether he's talking about Amanda, about his wife, whether he's talking about Le Mans. Let me tell you about Le Mans, he says in the letter. Hey, we had a good time. It went well. We won, And, and I mean, it's just so powerful. There is so much richness to the collection. Thousands and thousands of photographs that would take some time to work through. Powerful images of Bruce as a motor racing legend as he became, but also as a father and a man who inspired others. Photographs of Bruce in the workshop where men are surrounding him as he describes an innovation that he wants to introduce to the latest vehicle. When I worked for all those years in the Olympic movement, my passion was to inspire a youth generation through the stories and the passion and the energy of Olympians, New Zealand Olympians, and to utilise their stories of how they achieved greatness and how they could then go on to influence the lives of young New Zealanders. When Stephen came on board, it took us to a whole new dimension. We together generated some extraordinary exhibitions and we achieved so many things together that were just remarkable. In terms of collection objects of the Olympic Committee and the Olympic Museum, there was just very few objects really compared to the Bruce McLaren collection. I'll give you an example. Peter Snell. We had one pair of running shoes of Peter Snell's. I was mentioning this earlier this evening about the running shoes. One pair of running shoes, but we told 1 million stories around the achievements of Peter Snell. Whether it was a javelin, whether it was of another athlete, whether it was a pair of shorts, it didn't matter what it was from that athlete. Could that garment, could that piece of athletic attire inspire a youth generation? What I'm very, very passionate about, and I hope will evolve, is that the Bruce McLaren story, which must be told, will inspire young New Zealanders. This is why the energy is going in to create an indexing system, to create cataloguing, to box and preserve the objects in a way that is accessible and full of preservation. I can't say enough about how absolutely important it is to preserve the legacy of this collection, well beyond our lifetime, well beyond us. Who's going to care for these collections? This is what needs to be put into place. But I acknowledge the work that Amanda and Stephen and Zita and the volunteers have done at Hampton Down and of the trustees. I think the work is extraordinary. It's having the vision and the courage to go ahead to create and to manage a unique collection. It's a joy to be part of it. It's an honour to be part of it. And I wish the Bruce McLaren Trust every wish and hope to be part of that journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. And I think the Trust are very, very lucky to have someone of your calibre with your knowledge and expertise assisting us with what we're doing. So I hope we haven't given the game away. It's been mentioned a few times this evening that the Trust memorabilia and collection is going to have a new home. And to tell us more about that, I would like to invite Nigel McKenna to the stage. Nigel, welcome.
Thank you, Amanda. She's welcomed me to a stage, but there's actually no stage. I'm a former drummer, so I actually like stages. Can I support what Michael said, which is, I think we're hugely privileged tonight, this evening, to have Amanda as our MC, I'd like to refer to you as our leader. Okay. My background is I'm a humble property developer. I don't drive race cars. I don't actually own a McLaren. I probably should. I'd like to, want to. Hoping that Warwick might lend me one. My passion, though, as a developer is I'm a storyteller. I like to buy buildings, and I like heritage buildings. Let's just clarify, I'm not a Kiwi, if the accent doesn't give it away. I've been here half my life. I'm what we refer to as an adopted Kiwi, born elsewhere, but I adopted New Zealand as my home. When I came to New Zealand, and by the way, this is not about me, just brief background. In Wellington, I bought a number of heritage buildings on the waterfront. So for those of you who have ever dined at Dockside or Shed 5, they're two of my developments. I ran foul of the Historic Places Trust on Dockside when I told them it wasn't old, because from where I come from, it's not. I built Metropolis with Andrew Cook Senior and insisted that we retain the Magistrates Courthouse as the entrance. He wanted to demolish it. I kept the old Whitcoulls building when we did a little High Street. I put DFS Galleria into the old Custom House, and I recently converted the Mount Eden Fire Station Borough Council buildings into a luxury apartment project called Chambers and Station. So I believe that buildings can tell a story. They last longer than all of us. I tell my family that when I'm creating something, it will be here long after I've gone. So I love the concept. I am a passionate car person. I've always driven nice cars, even when I couldn't afford them. And courtesy of Colin, because he's a great ambassador of cars, obviously. And who in New Zealand doesn't love McLaren? So I've recently had a milestone birthday. We'll pretend I was 40, okay? Well, who laughed? And I've had my eyes on the McLaren garage for many, many, many years. And I set out for my milestone birthday to buy myself a present. And I acquired, fortuitously, the original McLaren garage on Remuera Road at 588 Remuera Road. For somebody who loves property, loves Auckland, loves cars, and has a monumental respect for what Bruce McLaren achieved, to me that was the ultimate birthday present to myself. It'd be nice if somebody bought it for me, but that didn't happen. I used to be, as I said, a drummer, and so for me in life, timing is everything. And in my career, I've had bad timing, and I've had good timing. And it's kind of interesting that I acquired the building in October last year, and Amanda and Stephen arrived back into New Zealand in November. And so I think I was one of the first meetings, so possibly one of the first people that they met when they got out of MIQ. They loved their MIQ experience, by the way. They absolutely loved it. So the dream is I own the building. I think that Bruce McLaren's story is actually untold. It's unrecognised. I think New Zealand as a country has performed, like Ireland, well above its weight. We perform phenomenally globally. But I think one of the few icons of our country that we're incredibly proud of is actually Bruce McLaren. But to tell his story and for his story to be recognised, it needs a home. It needs to be somewhere to be based in. I have enormous respect for what Charles is assisting Amanda and Stephen to do. By the way, I've been in the Hampton Downs industrial unit with my partner, Sarissa and I, and we have seen what Stephen and Amanda are doing. Their commitment to this trust is next level. He says 130 days out of 180. He forgets to tell you it was pouring rain, it was freezing cold. He's in his shed with no heat. And they're surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of boxes. The task that they're doing is Herculean. But ultimately, it needs to have a home. Now, tonight's not about us saying, ta-da, this is what we're going to do. Tonight is the beginning of a journey where we're incredibly proud, I'm incredibly proud of the ability and the desire to work together with Amanda as Bruce's daughter, with her husband Stephen, with the trustees of the Bruce McLaren Trust, Michael, Warwick. And what we want to do is, and we are open to input from everybody here, life members, McLaren aficionados, people who probably know more than I do, which is most people, about how do we truly celebrate Bruce McLaren's achievements. Everybody here knows more about him than I do. Okay, I know what you know, probably a little bit less, but I'm a property guy. So the one thing that I liked is that Les had the service station and bought the building. And so I love the fact that one aspect of Bruce was, he wasn't just a sportsman, he wasn't just a marketing guy, he wasn't just a designer, an innovator, and an engineer. But his dad gave him half of the ownership of the building because back in those days, it was the easiest way of giving him money when he was racing around the world, which could be done to avoid tax issues. So he was also a property guy. Love it. Okay? Yeah. You know, it's in the DNA. They absolutely love it. So what we want to do with the building is built in 1924. So it's 100 years old 2 years from now. Yes, there's a 60th anniversary in 1923 from 2023. But we're in Auckland, and I have to work with Auckland City Council. So it's taken me a year to get an approval to seismically strengthen the building. Okay, a year. And I don't have that approval yet, but I'm assured I'll have it in a fortnight. So our intention is to fully restore the building, to fully seismically strengthen it, to protect it for the future, as I've done with other heritage buildings, and to work with Amanda, with Stephen, with the trustees, to work out how do we effectively bring Bruce back home. It's where he was born, and provide the Bruce McLaren story with a home. And it will be my privilege as a property developer to do that, but ultimately I have to do it with the trust and with the wider McLaren family. So thank you.
Thank you, Nigel, and it really is exciting for us to be involved and working with Nigel and with his vision for the building. We're going to open the floor to questions and answers. Once that's finished, please continue to eat and drink, otherwise we're going to have leftovers for a long time into next week. When you leave, please, there are some posters and some CDs on the table here. If you would like to help yourself, Charles talked about hearing my father talking and reading some of the letters, and that's part of what's on those CDs. So, questions of any of the presenters tonight? Somebody needs to be brave and start off. And what we do, we have a microphone so that if anybody has a question, if they wouldn't mind speaking into it so that everybody can hear. Otherwise, we'll just repeat it back. But surely somebody has it. Otherwise, I can have another glass of wine. And oh no, we have a fantastic. Thank you. Well done for being brave. Thank you very much.
Amanda, do you foresee a time, and with the association now with Zach Brown, that we might see some of the cars from the McLaren collection coming out here, perhaps on loan to New Zealand?
Great question. It would be lovely to have some on display over here. It has happened in the past. I mean, usually it's kind of a show car without an engine and things that's easy to transport and travel. So it's certainly something that may be possible. It's not yet a conversation we have had with Zach, but it's definitely something we could potentially ask. And also for sort of, classic events moving forward, maybe. Who knows? We have told Zach that he needs to come over here and race, and also come and visit Remuera once we have decided what we're going to be doing there, and it's up and running. But yes, we're certainly having ongoing conversations with Zach. So
Thank you.
Bear that in mind. Thank you.
Anyone else? Vern, are you talking there?
Question. Look, I just feel truly honoured that I'm here to represent the trust and selling their property, and to see that it's going to such a level of where New Zealand motorsport has been for so long. It truly is an honour, and just to get something. So getting an offer on the table today, it's a start. It's not there. We'll work on that.
Thank you, Ian. There's a lot of people here from a lot of backgrounds. Some be involved with the trust before, and if you've got any questions or any comments you'd like to make, please, now's a chance.
Right. I have a very odd history question. I've been racing my Lotus 18 for hundreds of years. John Holmes. Many years ago, we got some of the old historic racing cars out at the Bruce McLaren School in Henderson, and they just wanted a display. And I had a chance to have a wander around this school, and in the entrance foyer, there's a picture of Bruce in a racing car at Ardmore, photographed and now on display. And the car he's driving is not a Cooper, it's a Lotus 18. And my question is, who the hell owned that and where is it?
I'm going to pass across to one of the greatest motor racing historians in New Zealand right now.
I think I was probably there that day as well that you were wandering around the school, John. I've never seen that, but it would be a good picture to have a look at. So I think the trustees have got an idea that we'd like to go out and visit the school. So I'll go and check. And if you were there when I was there, it was the day that I first met Amanda. So it was back in 1995. And so we'll check to see whether your memory is starting to fade or whether this could be the start of something, John, that we don't know about.
And I'm going to ask Liz, who is the head principal of the school, to take a photo of that photo and send it to me.
Kia ora, yes, I will do that for you. I was not there in 1995, I have to admit. But no doubt the photo is, because we respect everything that our lad, our legend, and as Bruce McLaren Intermediate School, we are part of the legacy that we uphold with high esteem. So I'll check that out for you, but we've got plenty more on offer at Bruce McLaren Intermediate since 1995. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. I know what's going to happen. As soon as I put this mic down and head for the bar, I'll get accosted, Stephen will get accosted, Mike will get accosted, and I'm not sure if Warwick's still here, because he is, but he wasn't feeling so well, so thank you for hanging in there, Warwick. We really appreciate that.
Racing Ray gave me a nod, so I guess he wants to say something.
Hi, Stephen. No, great to be here, everyone. Thank you. My name's Racing Ray. The only question I have is, when a McLaren, like a McLaren GT, is going down the motorway, and if he toots his horn, he's travelling at the speed of sound, by the way, travelling at the speed of sound. When he toots his horn, where does the sound go? Forwards or backwards?
It goes all round. You can't hear the horn for the engine.
You're so far ahead of the you can't hear it. Yeah, exactly.
Depends how tall you are. You got the GT. Give it to him. Greg Wickley.
Greg, a few words.
Hi, I feel very humble being here. Bruce McLaren was my hero growing up as a young person. 1967, I was drawing his Formula One cars, painted orange. I don't think I can get any of those drawings back again, but I'll see. But I've had the chance last year to buy a McLaren GT in orange, and I'm delighted. I'm not a person that, I try to fly under the radar with most of my cars. This one I can't. It's a stunning car, and I just enjoy showing it off. And I'm trying to show off the Bruce McLaren story right around the country. McLaren's here decided that they were going to use this car as their demo car in the South Island. I was the only demo driver, I bought it, and I've done 10,000 Ks around the South Island there at my own expense, showing the car off and hopefully encouraging other people along the way. So keep up the good work.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. I guess one of the people I should pass the microphone on is to Kenny Smith, because he's right next door to us in the industrial unit number 2, and we're number 3. So you thought you could hide behind someone taller than you, didn't you? The microphone's all yours, Kenny.
Why did you give me this?
Oh, sorry, do you want to stand on a chair?
Yeah. I first met Bruce back in, I don't know what year it was, those days have gone by, at Sydney Memorial Technical College, and Bruce was a prefect there, and he was actually a bad prefect because he didn't know how to punish people, he was too kind to people, but you know, great guy.
And he used to bring the Austin Ulster to school at times, parked in Wellesley Street, and I always perved on that car and thought, geez, I'd love to own that one day, and that one day did come. So that was the first car I ever started up in, and that was great. And we had a good relationship with Bruce. He was a magic guy, you know. He was always happy and very pleasant, you know, and a brilliant man, brilliant engineer. I could ramble forever.
He did give you a bit of information that changed your driving career. What was that?
Yes, I had a Lotus 41, which could have been a horrible car for a while. And I'd put a car, every time you put the brakes on it, darted left and right, it was out of control. And I was talking to Bruce, and he said, have you got towing on the front wheels? I said, yes. He said, good, tow it out. That's what we did on the Can-Am cars, and then you could let the steering wheel go when you put the brakes on, and it wouldn't wander all over the road. So that was my first experience with tow out, and that's what everybody uses. So there we are, that's something. I had my own engineer in those days, didn't I?
You certainly did. Jimmy Palmer, you're also a member of that team who raced against Bruce.
Yeah, well, we were privileged to have one of the first McLarens that come out of England, the Formula 2 1600, and we raced that for a season. To be honest, it wasn't a very good car, but I shouldn't say that. They did get better, and I think it was one of the first private entry McLaren single-seaters to win a race, which was at Pukekohe in an Auckland Car Club Gold Star meeting. But I'm not 100% sure on that. Michael would probably know. But yeah, we had a Cooper early on, and Bruce helped us tremendously with modifications to it, with wider wishbones and wider wheels and stuff, which he bought out. And in those days with customs were a bit of a problem getting parts into New Zealand, and the parts all come in with his equipment, and we put it on the car and made it a lot better car. But yeah, I had a short time with Bruce in the factory when we bought the McLaren, and yeah, can't speak too highly of him as a man to deal with, and his ability for engineering and driving.
Great, thanks, Jimmy. We're also very proud to have tonight with us probably the chap who's travelled the furthest distance to be here, Garth Hogan. Still here, Garth? Don't try and hide. You've had a real passion for McLaren for many years.
Yes, my dad was involved in circuit racing in those days, and was an acquaintance of Bruce's, and I've sort of tended to follow it ever since. Sadly, he chose a route where the cars go around corners and stuff, because the drivers have got to keep going back to the start line because they forgot where they came from. In the former motorsport I was in, that wasn't ever a problem. But to me, he's just been one of my idols, and I think to get the trust cranked up like they're doing, and you guys are doing, I think it's just a marvellous thing.
Thank you, Garth. I suppose we've drifted away a bit, haven't we, from questions. For those of you who don't know Garth raced dragsters and funny cars and all sorts of things for many years, and is a real name in drag racing history in New Zealand. Any questions that anyone has for us? Sam?
I actually don't have any questions. Thanks, Ray.
Got some answers.
Yeah, well, my name's Sam. I've been helping Stephen and Amanda down at the Trust every now and again to take a break from motor racing, I say. And I'm 34 and I feel like I've been around motor racing too long. But something I will say, and something I have expressed to Stephen and Amanda, is talking to a lot of people about Bruce McLaren. He was one of my boyhood heroes at school. I did all my projects on him. And in my 34 years of wisdom and talking to people around the motor racing circuits, I can confidently say I've never heard one person have anything untoward to say about him. They all just speak very, very highly of him. I think that's a really good example of the measure of the man, so to speak. And so really cool to see this sort of stuff going on, carrying it through to the future. So more young people, as I was at school, can carry that on and learn about where it all started here in New Zealand.
Well said. Thanks. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sam. I think it's important, and as Amanda mentioned right at the beginning, our plan for succession for the trustees is a must, and it's been on the table right from our first meeting. We're very serious about this because we know for the trust to continue, we need young blood. But we've got to have something to hand on to them that they can deal with and work with, and that's what we're trying to establish now. Anyway, any more questions?
I don't know how many of you would all remember the Northern Sports Car Club, Sandringham Road, Can-Am Racing, Castrol or Shell Films. So we go back a long time. That was the only form of what we got to see in our Kiwi drivers. We would flock to the school. Over 1,000 turned up for those monthly club nights. And it was there to actually watch a 30-minute film on Bruce and Denny, or the Bruce and Denny Show. And from there, that is where we then went and formed the Northern Sports Car Club, where we put together $100 vouchers for everybody to build the club rooms. No health and safety, we built them ourselves. And it was from there that a few of us actually found, or we actually got approached by a guy that said, hey, we've got an old sports car sitting in a paddock with a tree growing out of it. If you want it, come and see it. So we did. Harley Naraga, Brett Naraga, myself, went to a farm in East Tamaki. Guess what we found? Number 4. That sat in the Northern Sports Car Club rooms for many, many years. We rescued that car before that car got buried on a farm in East Tamaki. That was the beginning for me in those days of seeing something really, really special. And it's that sort of story that we have to share, and people talking about where we are, what we saw, what we did, and how we started within a sport, all of us coming from Edendale School Hall in Sandringham Road.
I feel a bit of an intruder. I'm not a McLaren person, McLaren fan, absolutely. Knew Bruce as the hero that we all had in the 60s, and Kenny, Jimmy, Graham Lawrence, Rolly Levis, several other great drivers who I've probably forgotten. And we all looked up to Bruce and Wally Wilmot, the guys that came out to run the Bruce McLaren race team and the Coopers, and later he had even had a period driving a BRM, but he probably wanted to forget that. And that was a dreadful car. But we always knew Bruce's infectious smile and his willingness to help anyone and discuss anything. But his knowledge, as Jim is testament to, that engineering skill that he had, that he mixed with his driving. And he had this incredible ability to make people follow him. Howden Ganley tells the story that if he asked the troops to just go to Africa and walk across the continent, they probably would all sign up and go and do it. What I'm so proud to be part of, to watch this happen, Amanda, Steve, Mike and Warwick, is that I've for a long while worried. I shared a conversation with Michael Giltrap about 12 years ago out at Hampton, and he said, David, if you guys don't get together and look after the name of Bruce McLaren, it's just going to fade away and no one will remember who he was. And it's a tragedy that in America, he is a folklore legend in so many communities of racing, and yet in this country, we struggle. We have struggled. So to the 4 of you, with the energies you've got and what Nigel's doing, maybe the spiritual home that we've longed for will return, and we can all look up to the hero that we all have. Thank you, Steve and Amanda.
Thank you, David.
Involvement goes back to being a kid at Levin in 1956 when Bruce's dad probably raced there first, and then Bruce later in the Austin Healey and cars and things like that. But it was rekindled in 1997 when the trust was formed at Whanupa, and I was the base commander when we were having a Wings and Wheels. And then I went to the States for 3 years and came back, and I was all but press ganged into being the chairman of the Bruce McLaren Trust, which I did for I don't know how many years, 10 or 12. I can look back now and think that my head was full of great ideas to do, but we were damned because we had no money at all. But one of the key things that we did was to follow Sir Colin Giltrap's advice to get the damn M8A finished. The car that Vern talked about before was pulling with the tree out of it. We got it finished, and then we faced a pretty agonising decision that the trust was as good as bankrupt. And when it's bankrupt, it can't trade or do things. We couldn't pay our debts. We couldn't pay Colin back for loans we'd made. So the decision was made, and it was not popular by any means to some people, and that was to sell the trust, so they say, sell the M8A, and with the money we could reinvest into other greater things and keep Bruce's memory alive. And at about that stage I departed the ship and left it to the capable hands of others. But I think we owe a debt of gratitude to the many people that worked as trustees and supporters and volunteers in my time as the chairman. The fact that the selling the M8A wasn't popular was necessary, as was pointed out. The judge at the court, when we were bankrupt, would give the M8A and all the stuff to a like-minded organisation, and that was pretty worse an idea for us to consider. So to sell the car was the obvious course of action, and from there to buy the property, as Amanda said before, and Michael has said, it was an investment in property, and that's returned a greater amount. So at least now we're in a position to go forward and put into practice some of those wild ideas I had that the trust could take and follow and remember Bruce's memory into perpetuity. So thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Jim.
And when I started out, I was 11 years old at Muriwai Beach, up at my auntie's place, writing about cars. That's when I met Bruce, and it was unbelievable how supportive he was. At that time, a kid going to school, primary school, but that was Bruce. And the whole time that I knew Bruce, he never ever changed. And as so many people have said tonight, you just never heard a bad word about Bruce. He was just such a great guy, and he really helped me follow my passion of writing about cars, and I'm truly thankful that I knew him, and I will always remember him. Thank you.
So thank you all for coming and for your attention and for all your support of the Trust, past, present and future.